You know, folks, the price of gas skyrocketing, and this economy, terrible shape. People trying to save as much money as they can. So if you're like me, you want to do your shopping at the 99...
Jay Leno has spent a lifetime making America laugh. But what he's revealing now, no one was prepared for. It's the kind of news that stops you cold. The kind that makes even the strongest people sit down and whisper, no. Not Jay. For decades, he was the steady, smiling presence who closed our nights. The man who joked through scandals, tragedies, and politics with that unmistakable warmth that only he could deliver. But now, at this very moment, Jay Leno is breaking a story that is shocking, personal, and far more frightening than anything he has ever faced in his long career. This isn't a headline written for ratings. This isn't some Hollywood whisper or exaggerated studio rumor. This is Jay himself, raw, shaken, and brutally honest. Speaking words that fans are struggling to process, because behind the comedic timing and behind the familiar denim shirt, Jay Leno has been quietly fighting battles that most people never knew existed. The accidents, the surgeries, the physical damage he hid from the world. It was only the beginning. And now, as new horrifying details emerge, details Jay has finally decided to reveal, his fans are realizing just how close the world came to losing him. For a man who built his whole identity on strength, resilience, and humor, this moment is different. This moment is heavy, emotional, terrifying, and for the first time in a long time. Jay Leno isn't here to tell a joke, he's here to tell the truth. For most of his life, Jay Leno seemed almost invincible. He worked harder than anyone in late-night history, rarely took vacations, and famously never touched alcohol or drugs. He built cars, restored engines, collected machines that roared louder than applause. And through all of it, he somehow managed to stay untouched by the chaos that Hollywood so often brings. Fans saw him as steady, unbreakable, and endlessly energetic. But behind the cheerful monologues and the familiar grin, Jay's life would soon take a turn darker than anyone expected. Everything began changing the day of his garage fire accident, the incident that sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. Jay was working like he always did, sleeves rolled up, grease under his nails, humming casually while repairing a vintage car. It should have been a normal afternoon in the place he loved most. Instead, a sudden flash, a burst of flames, and the sound of Jay crying out in agony shattered the silence. In seconds, fire engulfed his face and hands, leaving him with severe burns and pain he'd never known before. But what stunned people wasn't the accident itself. It was what Jay did afterward. Even while being rushed to the hospital, he cracked jokes, trying to calm everyone around him. Doctors were horrified by his injuries, yet Jay insisted he would be fine. He pushed through surgeries, grafts, and endless medical procedures with a stubborn resilience that confused even the professionals. Everyone expected him to retreat, to rest, to take time away from the spotlight. But that wasn't Jay. Just weeks after facing a near-death experience, he was back on his feet, performing again, smiling again, pretending nothing had changed. Except something had changed. Not long after his burn recovery, Jay suffered a serious motorcycle accident, breaking several bones in his body, his collarbone, his ribs, and his kneecaps. It was another blow, another moment that reminded the world he was human after all. Yet again he tried to shrug it off. He joked with reporters, telling them it was just another Monday, even though the pain was far deeper than he let on. For the first time in his career, fans began to worry. How many accidents could one man survive? How much could a body take before finally giving out? Jay had always lived life at full speed. Fast cars, fast workdays, fast recoveries. But now even he seemed shaken. Those closest to him noticed he moved more carefully, spoke more softly, and sometimes stared off into the distance as if confronting a fear he never wanted to admit. And yet, he kept going. That's what frightened people the most. Jay Leno was pushing through injuries, surgeries, and trauma as if stopping for even one moment would cause something inside him to break. He took on stressful projects, performed non-stop, and refused to slow down. Behind the scenes, friends begged him to rest. Doctors urged caution, but Jay's philosophy had always been simple. If you can walk, you can work. It was admirable and dangerous because the truth was becoming unavoidable, Both accidents had taken a toll far deeper than burns or broken bones. They shook his confidence. They weakened his body. And now, as Jay Leno steps forward to break the news the world never expected, the cracks that he hid for so long are finally coming to light. After the accidents, the world saw Jay Leno as the same unstoppable figure he always was. On television, he smiled, joked, and kept the energy flowing. But behind the cameras, the reality was far harsher. Jay was dealing with physical pain that refused to leave him, injuries that lingered for years, and the frightening possibility that his body might no longer keep up with his relentless lifestyle. For decades, Jay had built his life around routines. Early mornings with cars, late nights on stage, and hours spent writing, rehearsing, and producing. Nothing could slow him down, or so it seemed. But after the burn accident and the motorcycle crash, every movement became a reminder of vulnerability. Simple things like climbing stairs, getting into a car, or even sitting for long periods became exercises in patience, endurance, and sometimes fear. Doctors warned him repeatedly about long-term consequences: nerve damage from burns, joint pain from broken bones, and potential complications from repeated surgeries were all very real risks. Yet Jay continued performing, hosting, and collecting cars as if none of it mattered. Friends described him as stubborn, a perfectionist, and unwilling to acknowledge that he was no longer invincible. It wasn't bravado. It was survival. But survival came at a cost. Emotional exhaustion set in. Nights of sleep became shorter, pain became constant, and even his famous optimism began to crack. Behind the laughter, behind the jokes, he carried anxiety. A subtle, persistent dread that he might not be able to continue. The man who made millions laugh now faced the terrifying reality that his own health could derail the life he had built. In interviews years later, Jay admitted, cautiously, that those months after his accidents were some of the darkest of his life. He didn't share the full extent publicly at the time, fearing the world would see him as weak. But privately, he revealed how terrifying it was to look in the mirror and see someone who had survived countless near-death experiences, yet still felt fragile, human, and mortal. Friends and colleagues noticed changes too. Jay began scaling back his performances, limiting travel, and spending more time in private. The cars he once adored restoring became a refuge, a place where he could focus on precision, control, and beauty, a world entirely under his command, away from the chaos of Hollywood and the unpredictability of his own body. For the fans, Jay Leno remained the cheerful, tireless entertainer, the man whose energy seemed limitless, but in reality, the injuries had left a lasting impression. A haunting reminder that even someone larger than life cannot outrun fate. Every performance, every late-night joke, every car restored, and every mile driven was a testament to his determination, and also a quiet struggle against his own fragility. And now, as Jay himself steps forward to break the news that has been quietly building behind closed doors, the world is confronted with a shocking reality. Even the strongest, most disciplined people are not immune to the sudden, horrifying disruptions life can bring. The stage is set. The lights are on. And Jay Leno is ready to tell the truth about what happened, and why it's far worse than anyone could have imagined. The thing about Jay Leno is that most people only ever see the surface, the laughter, the charm, the effortless humor that lit up millions of living rooms. But after his accidents, the cracks beneath that surface became harder to ignore. Friends close to him described moments of quiet reflection that were almost unrecognizable. The man who once thrived on speed, precision, and high-energy performance was suddenly facing something far more difficult than a broken car engine or a punchline gone wrong: his own vulnerability. It wasn't just the physical injuries. It was the constant reminder that his body could betray him at any moment. Jay had always been meticulous about his health, the driving force behind his energy and longevity. But accidents like the garage fire and the motorcycle crash were unrelenting. Even after surgery and rehabilitation, he felt the lingering pain every time he moved. Nights became restless, mornings sluggish, and the once invincible entertainer realized he had to carefully consider each step he took, each joke he delivered, each mile he drove. What made it worse was the isolation. Fame had given him countless fans and colleagues, yet very few people understood the weight of being Jay Leno in those moments. He had always been surrounded by people, but nobody could feel the pain in his joints, the phantom burns on his skin, or the anxiety that crept in when he thought about performing for hours under stage lights. It was lonely, painfully lonely. Even his beloved cars, the machines that had always brought him solace, became bittersweet. They reminded him of the life he loved, building, restoring, racing. Yet each repair, each climb under the hood, now carried the risk of injury. Friends recalled that he would often stare at his collection silently, the joy in his eyes tinged with unease. A life he had built for pleasure and freedom had become a constant source of tension and fear. Through it all, Jay's resilience remained remarkable. He continued to perform, to host, and to restore his cars, masking the deeper pain with humor and charm. But behind the jokes, he carried the truth that his life could be permanently altered by just one misstep. And that truth was horrifying. He had faced near-death situations before, but this was different. This wasn't a stunt or an accident caught on camera. This was his life, stripped of its usual safety nets, and the reality that even someone as disciplined, cautious, and strong as Jay Leno could be so suddenly vulnerable. It was the kind of fear that didn't show in the monologues, the interviews, or the late-night laughs. Only those closest to him truly saw the toll it had taken. Now, for the first time, Jay Leno is breaking that story for the world. Not for sympathy, not for headlines, but to show the truth. Even someone who seems unstoppable, larger than life, and untouchable can face moments that are terrifying, moments that shake them to their core. And for millions of fans, the horrifying part isn't just what happened to him, but that the man who always seemed invincible has been quietly fighting his greatest battles all along. For decades, Jay Leno built a reputation on energy, humor, and a larger-than-life presence. To millions, he was the man who could make anyone laugh after a long day, the late-night host who never missed a beat, the car enthusiast who could turn a garage into a cathedral of mechanical perfection. But behind the smile, behind the stage lights, the reality had been far more complicated and far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. In revealing his story now, Jay is stripping away the laughter to show the human beneath. The truth is that accidents, injuries, and unforeseen challenges had left scars, both visible and invisible. The garage fire, the motorcycle crash, the surgeries, the lingering pain. They weren't just events he survived. They were daily reminders that even the strongest, most disciplined people can be shaken, can be vulnerable, and can live in constant tension between brilliance and fragility. Friends and family say that after the accidents, Jay began re-evaluating everything. The risks he once took without a second thought now required calculation. The projects he once tackled tirelessly became a balancing act between passion and caution. And the man who thrived on control realized that life had taken something he could never fully command. Yet even in those moments of fear, Jay refused to quit. He continued performing, continued collecting, continued living on his own terms, demonstrating the extraordinary resilience that fans admired but never fully understood. Perhaps the most horrifying realization for those watching was how close he had come to losing everything. His physical injuries could have ended his career. His emotional exhaustion could have silenced him entirely. And yet, Jay's determination to survive, to fight, to work, and to reclaim control kept him moving forward. It's a reminder that even legends are human, that even seemingly invincible icons face crises that are terrifying, isolating, and deeply personal. Now, as Jay Leno finally speaks out, the world is confronted with a reality few expected. The same man who could make millions laugh was quietly battling fears and pain that might have broken someone less tenacious. His story is horrifying, not because it is sensational, but because it is real. It reminds everyone that resilience has a cost, that survival demands sacrifices, and that even the brightest stars carry shadows the public never sees. In the end, the horrifying part isn't just the accidents, injuries, or near misses. It's the courage to keep going despite them. Jay Leno's story is a testament to human strength, perseverance, and the unrelenting drive to rise again, no matter the odds. And for fans worldwide, it's a reminder that behind every laugh, every late-night smile, every sparkling performance, there can be unseen battles, battles that are terrifying, deeply personal, and yet remarkably heroic. Jay Leno survived, thrived, and continues to inspire. But now we all understand a little more of the terrifying reality he faced to get here. The man who made the world laugh has shown us something even more powerful. The terrifying truth of resilience and the courage it takes to face life's most horrifying moments head-on.